Hello, I'm the Accidental Bookseller. My name is Paul. Welcome to the channel. So last week I saw a video by Madeline at Madeline Reads 4, which is a fantastic newish channel. Highly recommended that you go and see it. She did a video for a time capsule where what books would you pick if you were to put them in a time capsule for them to be discovered in 1,000 years' time. The original video for this was done by Mike at Bibliophile Bookscape. He did some very flexible parameters when he did his video, which was to select 5 genres and have at least 2 books in each. However, the parameters were flexible because he wanted an emphasis on why people were choosing books to go in the time capsule. So that's kind of what I've done. I haven't stuck to genres. I've ended up with 14 books. I've not really concentrated on putting them in genres. I just picked books for a reason, which was the reason was why would you put them in the time capsule in the first place for them to be found in 1,000 years. So without further ado, here's my books for the time capsule. By the way, I'll list Mike and Madeline's videos in the notes section. Highly recommend you watch those. So the first book is Badgerlands by Patrick Barkham. My first instinct was to choose books with particular animals that I like. And badgers are one of my top 3 favourite wild animals, because I figured in 1,000 years' time, who knows if they're still going to be around? Who knows whether mankind will still be around, or what mankind will have done to the planet, or what natural things might have happened to the planet. Who knows whether badgers are going to be around? So I figured, let's have a book in the time capsule, show people what badgers were. And in the same vein, I've picked the Hedgehog book by Sally Coulthard. I do want to pick up the new naturalist book on hedgehogs, which is a very meaty tome, but this is a nice book about how to practically help hedgehogs, and there's just lots and lots of nice practical information about hedgehogs by Sally, who's a very popular author. The third book that I would put in the Times capsule is H.G. Lloyd's The Red Fox. Not read this one yet. Want to. Obviously, that's why I've got it. But I wanted to pick a book that was quite a deep dive into foxes, because some of the more modern ones don't seem to go into too much of a deep dive about foxes, and so I think that should go in the time capsule. Incidentally, while on the subject of foxes, I highly recommend a channel called Goacher Reads, which is a channel by a writer called Lucy Goacher, and her channel is completely devoted to feeding and looking after foxes that come and visit her in her garden. Absolutely fantastic videos, fantastic channel, and I'll list that in the notes section as well. By all means, have a look at that. The third book, no, it's the fourth, isn't it? The fourth book is Apocalypse Ready, which is The Manual of Manuals and a Century of Panic Prevention by Taras Young. And there's just lots of practical information, and also past kind of advertisements, and it's kind of I guess you could call it a coffee table book about the apocalypse, really, but I guess it's not really a coffee table book, because if you're in need of a guide for during the apocalypse, you'll have probably burnt your coffee table for firewood, so it won't be a coffee table book anymore. But yeah, I heartily recommend this as a fun stroke serious informative guide to the apocalypse, because it talks about other things like Spanish flu. And let's have a quick read of the notes. So you've got pandemics, tuberculosis, recent viruses, natural disasters, extreme weather, when the earth moves, nuclear war, preparation, shelter, blast and fallout, alien invasion, lots and lots of... Don't know why I didn't just show you that. But yeah, but I figured 1,000 years' time, you don't know. I mean, apocalypse might be just round the corner, but in 1,000 years' time, someone might be scrambling around, and it might have just happened or about to happen, and there we go. So if there has been some kind of nuclear wipeout or some reason why mankind has had to, seek shelter or go underground or something, maybe you're getting a little bit tired of the surroundings, and maybe you can go up onto the surface for a few hours, in which case you might be, for some reason, looking for a new place to live. And that's where Cold War secret nuclear bunkers might become useful. And this is all about the different nuclear bunkers that exist in the UK. Photos about contents, and yeah, just lots and lots of... It's called The Passive Defense of the Western World During the Cold War by Nick McCamley. So yeah, so this will let you know what other bases there might be to go to. The next one is Communion, a true story by Whitley Strieber. As I said before, this is the very first book that I ordered from a bookshop as an adult, pre-publication. This is the first edition of it, which was, I'm going to say 1990-ish, 89, 87. So if you don't know, Whitley Strieber is a guy who claimed to be subjected to and experienced alien abductions. Turns out throughout his life, and he wrote lots and lots of books on it. Still alive, but he's written lots and lots of books on the same topic. They get a little bit... I've read most of them, and they get a little bit, I'm not going to say tedious, but each book kind of promises a grain of truth, and you never really get there. And as I've got older, I've come to believe that it's highly unlikely that aliens will come from another planet. Not because they might not be out there, maybe they are, but the universe is, 13, 14 billion years old. Mankind as a species has been around for 100, 200,000 years at most, maybe 300,000 years. Civilizations maybe only about probably 15 to 20,000 years. So in my opinion, civilization has got a finite length of time before it destroys itself or it becomes destroyed by a natural catastrophe, as has happened previously on the earth. And mankind, in my opinion, is in a race to get off the planet before the next time occurs. And if it doesn't get off the planet, then it's good night, Irene. And we've only got a sample size of one of experiences of civilizations and how they treat planets. If other civilizations are the same, then how will they get to such a level of detailed, sophisticated travel ability to traverse the universe to get here? The capabilities are just extreme, and it's my opinion that a civilization will wipe itself out before it achieves those capabilities. That doesn't mean to say that there aren't other species about, which leads me to the next book for the time capsule, and it's Luis Elizondo's Imminent: Inside the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs, or UAPs, Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena as it's now known. The term UFOs isn't used anymore. It's UAPs, because UFOs is a jokey subject, and UAPs has been seen, certainly recently, that as they exist as a national security threat if we don't know what they are. In 2021, the American government confirmed that they do exist and they don't know what they are. Primarily, that came about through the work of Lucy Elizondo and Tom DeLonge of Blink-182 and the To the Stars Foundation. People like Jeremy Corbell, Georgeknapp, other people as well, who've worked tirelessly to get the subject more officially known, and talk about the subject a little more in one of my, I think it's a non-fiction book haul where I initially got this. I still have this to read, and in fact, when I finish my next book, I'm going to interrupt my TBR stream to actually get this read finally, so I can do a proper review and do a video review of it. But essentially, as a result of things like the Tic Tac videos, the gimbal video, I can assure you I'm not a crank who's into all kinds of conspiracies. In fact, I've got a friend who runs a Facebook group on the paranormal, and he probably regrets every day telling me about it, because I tend to trash a lot of the ideas that they get excited about, because there's so much absolute utter nonsense on the internet, on YouTube, that garners hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views, and it's just complete nonsense. So, for example, there's if you, I'm tempted not to tell you, because if you Google it, uh, your YouTube feed will get swamped with such things. So, for example, the Atlas 3I comet, which was obviously a comet just before Christmas, people were getting their pants wet over all these things that this comet was, or was supposed to be, and it was just a comet. I'm someone who's just 50-50 completely down the line until proven otherwise. I'll take data, read as much information as possible, and try not to form an opinion, because once you've got enough data, it's not really an opinion anymore on whether something's real or not. So, for example, in my former colleague's Facebook group, where there was and just on the internet generally last year, there was some footage knocking around, and it was I asked where it was, and oh, it was somewhere near Iran, I was told. I said, well, Iran are the prime makers and developers of drones, so it's not going to be a UFO, it's going to be a drone. And no one replies, and the whole kerfuffle dies a death on the internet. So I'm not someone who gets blown away and wrapped up in all the massive conspiracies that are out there on the internet and in the world generally. And I tend to follow and agree with lots of the things that are built around the Luis Elizondo situation and the Congress meetings that took place. I think they've had 3 meetings now over the last couple of years where people come to Congress and speak about their experiences. Obviously, the craft exists because the American government has confirmed that the craft exists. And disclosure is likely coming soon, not necessarily to the degree that enthusiasts, shall we call them, are hoping, but some degree of disclosure is coming soon. I believe that they're not from another world, but they're from this world, this planet, maybe interdimensional, not sure, but I'm pretty sure that they don't come from somewhere else in the universe, because of what I spoke of before. Just the mathematical probabilities and the science suggests that they don't. I'm very much a probability person, and I think it's very possible that they live on this planet, or some are somehow connected to this planet. If you are interested in knowing how they might be associated with the planet, maybe Google something like the Silurian hypothesis, where two professors called Frank and Schmidt, forget their first names, did some work with whatever university associated with official work. And they come up with the Silurian hypothesis, which was that if a previous species of mankind existed on the Earth, such is the decimation of how traces of a civilization erode over time, erode over hundreds of thousands, millions of years, then it's impossible to know whether mankind is the first species, first intelligent civilization species that have existed on the Earth. So, for example, 56 million years ago, there was something called the CPET, no, the PETM event, where just through looking at isotopes in the Earth, they've been able to identify that an event happened 56 million years ago that wiped everything out. Not the Ice Age or the dinosaurs, this is completely separate. But in the isotopes measured from 56 million years ago, something happened over a period of 20,000 years where in those isotopes they can identify global warming and certain substances which indicate the sorts of things that mankind are doing now. Was that a species that existed 56 million years ago? Who knows? Scientists suggest it's not. It's more likely to be volcanic activity. But certainly the degree to which planetary erosion and change occurs, other than the little sedimentary things in the planet, you can't tell whether something was here or not. In things like the Nimitz video and other videos, and by other videos, I mean military videos, I pay no attention to civilian videos because there's so much fakery involved. It's better to go with military videos because they will have received so much scrutiny and recorded on the record. There is truth to those videos in that the events actually happened. What they are is speculation, of course, but there's a lot of videos around where water and oceans are involved, and there's a certain degree of belief in some circles that given the depth of oceans and the degree of undiscovered areas of the ocean, it's not an impossibility that something could be present in the oceans connected with the kinds of crafts that have been confirmed as existing. Anyway, I've rabbited on for quite a while, a lot of which I'll probably edit out, but certainly I've picked the communion book and this book so that in 1,000 years' time, you would imagine that it'll be a lot greater known, hopefully in a few years, but certainly 1,000 years, we'll know a lot more about what's going on. And a reader in 1,000 years can have a laugh or can be interested in what we were talking about in 2026 and before. One thing that's not talked about so much is something for which Nick Bostrom is could you call him a godfather in it? Certainly he's a leading light. This book is Super Intelligence by Nick Bostrom. He's very much a forward thinker in simulation theory. I will put a link to a website for simulation theory because Nick wrote a PDF on simulation theory, which is just outstandingly fantastic. If you don't know, simulation theory is all about whether this reality is actually real or whether it is a computer simulation. And the PDF explains why and how it might be, because the only thing that limits a simulation occurring is the degree of computing power and the ability to produce and write a simulation. We haven't got there yet as a society to produce the computers necessary, but we're getting to a point where, especially with AI technology, where the computing power available is making the creation of a simulation you can see it as being quite a possibility. We are getting there soon for when we'll have the computing power to create a simulation. And once you create a simulation, or you get to the point of planning a simulation, you are at that point where you have to decide as a society, are we the creators of the first simulation, or do we inhabit one of the simulations that are about to be created? It's not so much a stupid crackpot idea. When you look around the world and the planet and the universe and just everyday life, everything is just so governed by mathematics. There is mathematics in absolutely everything. The structure of leaves on trees follows mathematical formula. There's just so much of it about. And as someone who's involved in software testing as a career, this sort of thing becomes fascinating because it's very possible once you look at the world around you and say, well, that's mathematical, that's based on maths. And if it's based on maths, it's, let's call it computerizable. And if it's computerizable, it can be programmed. And if it's programmed, then it could, and you get all those programs together, even things like animal species where they have evolved to have particular types of breeding ability or defense mechanisms, it can all be put into the pot of being computerizable. You can see the connections between all those things and the way that computer programs work. It's completely fascinating. So I would take Superintelligence by Nick Bostrom into the time capsule. That's the heavyweight stuff done. So in addition to some of those more serious tomes, not that these aren't serious to come, but I would want to have at least a couple of outstanding books that readers in 1,000 years can read. So I've picked my 2 favourite books of all time, which you all know already if you've watched the channel, Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, my number 1 book of all time. My number 2 book of all time, The Road. Wouldn't be a video without mentioning The Road. So those are 2 favourite books. And I also figured that, let's just say that the capsule is opened by one survivor. Let's say there's not many survivors on Earth for whatever reason in 1,000 years, and they come across the time capsule, and they might be in need of help of how to survive. So I figured, let's bang Robinson Crusoe in there as well. This is a good read, even though it's written hundreds upon hundreds of years ago. 1719. So what's that? 307 years. It's a good read, and it deserves to be in there. So let's say things have taken a darker turn, and all the AI doom mongers have been correct, which I don't think they are, by the way. AI is, or the power of AI is way overblown in my opinion. But let's have Robopocalypse in there by Daniel Wilson. I don't see Robopocalypse getting a mention too much on Booktube, and it really should, because it's not, I mean, it's not a 5-star book in my opinion, but like I've said before, I don't have many 5 stars. I've probably only got about 12 to 15 lifetime 5 stars. I'd probably put it at something like a 3.8. And it's written very much in the same style as World War Z, as in diary format as events are happening. So in World War Z, there's different parts all over the world where there'll be kind of diary entries on such and such a day. This sort of thing happened, and the reader can gradually see the zombie apocalypse occurring until it does. It's not like, or it's not unlike the film with Brad Pitt. It's just very different. I very much recommend the book, even if you watch the film. 2 very different things, really. And Robopocalypse is kind of like World War Z in that there's different events that happen which indicate the sentient activation of machines globally. And as we don't know what things are going to be like in 1,000 years, we'll have that. And the final book in the time capsule, because we don't know what music, if any, will exist in 1,000 years, and somebody opening the capsule may not know what music is. So let's give them a grounding in goth. So I've picked The Art of Darkness by John Robb, which is the history of goth. Just lots and lots and lots of information. 700 plus pages on goth music. So in 1,000 years' time, they might not have the facility to play stuff, but at least they've got a book on it. Those are all my books to put in the time capsule to be opened in 1,000 years' time. If you've enjoyed the video, by all means click like, click subscribe. I very much appreciate you watching any video that I do. And if you want to see some more, click that subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Goodbye.